Kia ora everybody, welcome along to the League&Order podcast. Joining me, of course, Lavina good. Lavina, tauranga yes?
Tauranga yes, tauranga gorgeous, tauranga sunny, and great to be here for our 13th episode. How about that? Who would have thought we'd get...
Man,
They said we wouldn't make it.
getting through it.
we wouldn't make it.
They said we wouldn't make it. And of course, Tony Kemp, who's hurt a lot of feelings on the way to getting to 13.
13, lucky 13. Well, we're still here, and everyone knows my number. Just give us a call.
All right, let's get straight into it. Rugby league, we talk about it from a New Zealand perspective and we have a bit of fun with it. But also we get our feelings out there. And I feel like today especially, it's been a particularly rough weekend / start of the week for the NRL Warrior fans. Well done. They won against the West Tigers.
Awesome.
Yes.
And they played well. They actually played well. I just thought they played great. They deserved the victory. They weren't expected to win, which is usually when the Warriors win. A few things, came into place for them. They played with spirit and heart and a well-cultured team, and things were starting to look up. And last week, Blake Aysh was saying that maybe Todd Payten would be at the top of that coaching list. And last week I thought, I don't know if I want him as the coach for the Warriors. I'm not sure if he's the pick for me. Not that I get to decide. But at the time, he wasn't at the top of my list. But after that Tigers game, I thought to myself, maybe he's managed to get something out of this players and can reshape, reform, remake a club into being a championship club. Maybe he's got something. So you can imagine when I sat down on Monday night to watch NRL 360 with my lovely cup of tea, all excited about some coverage of the Warriors that would be replayed and talked about, and I was slapped in the face by Todd Payten. I could not believe that he'd come out in that live interview and said that he doesn't want the job. And for whatever reason, whether it be personal because of his wife's dad being crook overseas, or the fact he wants to take the Cowboys job, or he just doesn't want to take the Warriors job, I was absolutely surprised. So a week ago when Aysh mentioned it, I didn't want him in the number one job. But the funny thing is, now that he doesn't want it, I'm starting to think, was he going to be the right man for the job, Tony?
There's a lot to unpick in that opening statement, you know what I mean, about Todd and how well the Warriors have gone and the position.
Hey, before you unpick it then, can I just say Aysh is away today. He's sick. He has a cold.
You know what? Because he sat in here with that Tigers top on and he doesn't want to have to come back in here and put a Warriors top on, mate. He actually laid his who he lies with out on the table, and they actually got pumped on the weekend. So, I thought the game was fantastic. I thought, the middle of the ruck especially defended superbly. I couldn't believe that Maguire didn't have a plan B. Generally, his big forwards roll through the middle. Olawai, especially, he was kept really quiet. Grant at hooker probably had his quietest game because they weren't going across the ad line. But the defence from the Warriors in the middle of the ruck, if they could produce that week in, week out, they'd be a top 8 side. And you just saw the way that they could play on the back of it. Peter Hiku picking up a couple of tries and just the attitude, having 3 new guys in their side because the other 4 went home. Who would have picked the Warriors? They were the upset of the round, but just the effort from the middle of the park, I thought, outstanding. But then what transpired on the back of it, and I just don't think it's a Todd Payten thing. I think it's been a horrible month for them. I think it's been a PR disaster. Whoever their media manager is, he needs to be sacked. I got no problem saying that. Let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at the last.
I love
month.
Richard Becht.
But let's have a look at it. All right. If I was Becht, I'd be sitting there packing myself. So you got the owner coming out and gives it to Greenie. You know what I mean? So Greenie's blindsided by it, and so that's a bit of a PR disaster. He then says about Mooks, he's got no personality, and then that goes into the media, and then all of a sudden you're talking about Blake Green signs for Newcastle. Jeez, isn't that enough of a issue to deal with before Todd Payten? And here's the big one: Todd Payten does a pre-record. Yeah. And then goes and sits in his room for 25 minutes, if you read the press and you believe it, and then decides to phone up a producer and blindsides everybody and says, I lied. I've actually been offered the job 2 weeks ago and I've turned it down. And it doesn't matter what reasons you got. You know what I mean? I just think from the Warriors' position at the moment, it has been a PR disaster. I'd hate to be a sponsor sitting there thinking, I don't know what's going to come next. I don't know what's happening at the club. I don't know what story's going to break next. But at the moment, I reckon over the past month, we've had some pretty big stories come out and they haven't been too good for the club. So let's unpick that.
I got two things to say. One, I don't think it's Richard Beck's fault because he's the PR guy for the Warriors. I don't think it's his fault because there's a lot of shit that he doesn't have a lot of control over happening away from him. It's not like he organised these things to happen in process. So as much as I would like to think, you'd be over that, I think it's pretty hard when you've got an owner who will come out and say those kinds of things. And secondly, you can't have a go at Todd Payten for the father-in-law going into chemotherapy and wanting to make sure that he's close there. However, it just started to unravel a bit, didn't it, during the interview when he was like, "So what do you mean? Is it the Cowboys' job?" And he's like, "Okay, yeah, you've got me. I don't want to play it out in public." It sort of started to unravel a bit, and I was like, "Oh, I don't have a good feeling about this."
Oh, look, I mentioned it on the radio yesterday. I thought it was a really courageous decision. I've said 3-4 weeks ago that Todd probably shouldn't take the job. It was a similar situation to myself. And I thought, it isn't the father and bless his soul and how sick he is, and that's just, family first. If you're taking your wife home, she needs to be with her father, and the guy's a champion for doing that. You know what I mean? So well done on that decision. But what I'm saying is that it wasn't the only decision that made him decide not to coach the Warriors. When you're talking about coaching, he would have looked at the roster. He would have looked at the criteria of his own.
Are you telling me the roster at the Cowboys is better than the roster at the Warriors?
I'm not talking about the Cowboys at all.
Right.
Okay, so let's not speculate on who the coaches are or who's getting a job anywhere, because it's all media speculation. If you look, I'm talking from a coach's perspective. If it was any decent coach, what they would have is their own criteria to see if they're going to be successful at the club, because a lot of it is built on success, what's coming. And at the moment, and this, you read between the lines, they don't even watch football. Well, come on, mate. That's saying that you're proportioning blame on your players, making an assumption that they don't watch football. I bet you all the Aussie boys watch football. You know what I mean? Or, and a hell of a lot of the Kiwi boys would wake up in the morning and watch football. They don't have to stay up all night and watch it. But when he started talking about it, what he was basically saying to me is that I've had a look at the club and it's not the right time for me. I think it's a bad decision for me to go in as a brand new coach to pick up all these issues that the Warriors have. And I think that's the bigger picture here. I think what's happened and transpired in the last month is that it's a schmozzle, mate. It is. It's all over the place.
Okay, what's the biggest baggage you would look at straight away if you were going in for a coaching job at the Warriors? What are you looking at as the big shit bag that you go, oh God, I've got to sort that out? What is the main, number one in your opinion, baggage that the Warriors have over them?
Yeah, look, Lavina touched on it and we all have about recruitment. I think recruitment is the key issue at the club at the moment. And what's really worrying is that Cameron George came out in an article yesterday and said that, O'Sullivan, he can talk anyone and talk to anybody and get anyone here. Well, the proof is in the pudding. He's got nobody here. He cannot talk to anyone, and he is one of the major issues why the Warriors are not doing so well, because they have no depth. And if you look at it simply through the COVID period, he is not recruiting or has a recruitment strategy to replace players from his own structure in New Zealand into the Warriors structure. They've all come out of NRL clubs. You know what I mean? So I think the first thing you would look at recruitment. But the last month for me has pointed out three issues, and it's a three-tier issue. One is that the CEO has to deal with the owners. Okay, so he's got a couple of new owners, Marc Robinson and Rob Cruder, talking to him all the time. That starts the confusion. He then goes to his recruitment manager, and I'm telling you now, get rid of him. I've said it all along. Get rid of O'Sullivan. He is terrible. He is not good for this country. And the third thing he's got is
whoa, not the club, the entire country.
Mate, because there is no development in the country.
Okay, I get it.
So it is a country issue. All right, we want every kid to play for the Warriors. And the third issue is the football department. Now, talk about the football department. Blake Green has signed to go to Newcastle 3 months out of his contract. Now, if it was me being part of that football department with 4 points outside the 8, there's no way in the world I'd probably my number one leader leave the team, because it sends such a bad message across the team. And let's look at the two teams. Newcastle in desperation because they've lost their hooker in their half, hooker in their 5'8", and the Warriors who are 4 points out. Newcastle have gone, we're desperate, we need Blake Green. The Warriors have said, our season's over, let's get rid of him. You know what I mean? That's what it looks like. So what is it saying to the rest of the leadership group? What's it saying to your skipper, who's been over there battling his butt off? But what's it say to the people in New Zealand when you are actually 4 points out the 8 and Newcastle in a similar position where they want to get in the 4 and they show desperation and we don't?
I think it's a real loss losing Blake Green for the rest of the season. And in
100%.
fact, I thought it was when the new owner came out and said that we don't want him next year at all. I mean, he had another year in him, and I know Andrew Johns described him as being the rudder of the Warriors. He literally steered the ship. And at the moment, when you lose Green and you replace him with Harris Tavito, I mean, that kid can play football. He's sensational, but he's not gonna steer the ship around the park. That's what Blake Green did, and you can't replace experience. And he had, his kicking game was impeccable. It was who you turned to when you wanted, someone to control the match, and he was the orchestrator for the Warriors. So now he's gone on the back of an owner saying he's too old, we don't want him. And just to let that out in the media, and for a player to hear that secondhand through the media, not from a club that he's, been a part of for so many years, I think that was heart-wrenching. And he will go on and have a starting role playing alongside Mitchell Pearce for the Newcastle Knights, and it's just another stab in the back of the Warriors. I'd love to have a conversation with Tohu Harris right now. I think he was one of the player of the round for me last week, and has been remarkable all year. And it doesn't matter what team he plays against, he never gives up, and he plays like it's a State of Origin match for him and like it's his final game. I'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with him and just say, how are you feeling about the club right now? How does it make you feel that they sacked your coach? How does it make you feel that, the orchestrator and the guy that steered the ship around the park is about to be lost? Because once he starts playing bad, once he starts chucking the toys out of the cot, then it's definitely all over for the Warriors. On the back of a performance where they played really good for the Tigers, I just think this decision-making is poor. And in regards to the coach, Kempy, as well, why not have the boxes ready to be ticked before you get rid of Stephen Kearney? So this is what we want. We want a coach with a different personality. We want someone who's got a 10-year recruitment policy. We want someone who's going to micromanage the management behind him. And then you get rid of your coach and you interview people, whether or not it's Jeff Tuvey or anyone, and say these are the players or the coaches that fit this criteria. That's what they should have done, rather than sack a coach, panic, give it to the assistant coach. He doesn't want it. What now? What do you think Todd Harris thinks about?
Yeah, look, and that's exactly what I'm saying about the leadership group and how they're feeling about, putting all this effort in and hanging in there, only 4 points out of the top 8. I'll tell you how he's feeling. He's devastated. You know what I mean? He said that. He said, the only reason I come here was because of Steve Kearney. He's a type of bloke that won't rest on his laurels. If he decides to go, that's the problem you got. Then he's going to go, and he'd be the first person that a club would pick up. And when you're talking about the coaching issue, it's one. That's what I'm saying. It's one PR disaster after another. The Stephen Kearney, Todd Payten thing leads. If you analyse it and you're looking at it in depth, is around this whole PR disaster around Jeff Tuvey doesn't fit the criteria. In that one statement, it was a PR disaster. 4 finals, 1 grand final. 4 final series, 1 grand final statement. So what part of the criteria does he not hit? You know
that was
what I mean?
the first thing my friend said to me as soon as we'd read the news. It was like, what, he wins? He wins championships? What criteria is it?
So given that he doesn't hit maybe some personal criteria or some team building criteria or whatever, the first thing people are going to think about is, well, he took him to 4 final series and 1 grand final, so he can actually get a team. That was a PR disaster. Then your assistant coach leaves after your coach has been unceremoniously dumped, and no one knows what's on the back end of it. No one knows where it's going, what's on the back end of it, and the names that have been thrown up. And I was asked this yesterday on the media, what do you think about these coaches? And I said, what? The media coaches, because none of the club have spoken about these coaches. These are all speculative comments. When you're talking about Anthony Griffiths, Neil Henry, Nathan Brown being thrown back into the mix, the Walker brothers, who knows if Tubes has been thrown back into the mix. It's all the media drumming it up. And I just think if you're looking at, this is the Todd Payten decision, if you're looking at it, the only coach we are going to get, I think, is not a current coach. I think if we're going to go and get a coach, it's going to be a coach that is actually looking for a job at the moment, because they've got nothing to lose. So they'll come in and pick it up. It's about the decision making to get that coach. Now that takes me to that other point that I said. Well, if you're looking at the team that puts the interview together, like, with all due respect to Rob Crute and Marc Robinson, they shouldn't be on that. They should be handed a recommendation from the CEO and a qualified panel that decide on what the coach is. And if you look internally in New Zealand, and again, due respect to to Simon Mannering, who's retired as a player. Yes, he may know what worked and what didn't work at the club, but he isn't a coach. He isn't a football manager. And if you look through the New Zealand structures, wouldn't it be even worthwhile? And we all have different opinions, but wouldn't you get Bluey McLennan, Graham Lowe, Frank Endicott, and Marc Graham, for instance, to sit down and say, look, we can assist you in putting together what this would actually mean for the team in New Zealand if you got the right coach? Because, hey, we've been there and done that. But there just doesn't seem to be enough of that robust external opinion that isn't from within the organisation. And here's where I'm at. I think that's what the problem is. I think it's in a pot and it's just boiling. And every decision that's coming out at the moment is because it's been making internal, and they're making second-rate decisions. So you've got second-rate people making second-rate decisions, therefore you get what you get. It's like Oliver Twist handing out his cup and saying, "Can I please have some more, sir?" You know what I mean? Look at Latelli. Let's look at a couple of players just recently. Look at Latelli, and here's a prime example for me. Latelli left the Toronto Wolfpack because they got thrown out of the competition. Yeah, he was up there for the Warriors. He was sitting there. We need that player. We need him. We need players. We need that player. No, recruitment saying no. He's not our player. Shit. Frank Panisi comes in, the best manager with his recruitment system, and this is what hit me. He basically said, we were down 3 centres, we needed a player. So we went to Toronto Wolfpack and looked through their roster. We saw Latelli. Of course he's won a grand final. Of course he can play first grade. We needed him. And here's the comment he made. He hit all the criteria we needed to make a good Melbourne Storm player. We communicated that with the other centres, and they all can't wait for him to get here because he's going to add pressure to them, and they're all winners and they want to win games.
Yeah, but what has Melbourne done recently to prove that they're a good organisation?
Well,
that's just sour me. I know what you're saying.
What is that clinical play they do all the time? It's so boring, The way they keep playing and everything in place.
I don't know.
I think the Warriors will go with Nathan Brown. I think that'll be their choice because he's real buddy-buddy with Peter O'Sullivan, the recruitment officer that Tony Kemp loves so much. And the owners
That's why they shouldn't go with Nathan Brown.
That's what'll happen, though, because the owners love O'Sullivan and he's good mates with Brown, and Brown put his hat in, then he took it out, and now they're desperate because they don't have anyone else. And you'll see the gentleman that failed with the Knights and failed with the Dragons and failed with St Helens and failed with Helensville, etc., take over the Warriors for next year.
Who's your personal favourite?
Me? Yeah. I would like to see Brisbane Wolf put his hand in the put his hat in the ring for this position, just because when I interviewed him a couple of times over the internationals with Tonga, it was amazing what he could do for those players, and not just because of his Tongan affiliation, but he has a very good rapport with rugby league players in general. I think it'd take a special coach to coach the Warriors in general. It's not an easy team to coach. It'll take someone that's committed to moving to New Zealand and living here, and someone that would actually have full control. And he could turn a nation around, let alone a club around. And he wants full control. And he's the sort of person that would say to the owners, I know you fund the club, but it's not up to you what halfback I play this week. But he's not even being considered by anyone, by me. I think they'll go with Nathan Brown, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of torn. I want a big name, but when I come to think about it, I just want someone who's going to help the club. I don't even care if it's a big name, someone I haven't heard before. Like, just someone who understands what it is that the club is about, and then has a vision. Like, if I've learned anything from listening to you both speak, it is we need good recruitment, we need a good vision for the future for the next 10 seasons, and then we need to trust this person and let them get into it.
Well, no, that's rubbish.
Okay, I've learned nothing.
That is absolutely.
Have a go with everyone else, not me.
We don't want someone to come up and pick up the pieces and roll with the same pieces. The issue is that the DNA in the club, and this is where I thought Mark Robertson would get it right, needs to be changed. The whole DNA in the club needs to be changed. You know what I mean? Right down to the look of the gym, to the people that stand in that gym, to the people that stand on the football field, the people that do the media, the people that manage the team, the assistant coaches. They need a change of DNA, and they need their CEO to step up and make the calls, or have someone that will make the calls for them.
Is there someone like that? Can be like, I feel like this week, once we've finished the show, what I would like you to do is write a list. Imagine everybody is free. Everybody is free, and you could create the perfect Warriors club, from CEO to head coach, to assistant coach, to recruitment manager, and write a list and put a name next to each one of those roles.
That'd be a great podcast. That'd be a great podcast, because I think what you're touching on is, if you look at the current situation when they're putting these groups together, it's insular, it's internal. You know what I mean? It's about you basically know when they say, oh, we've got these guys and they're the ones putting the criteria and they're the ones that know who they're going to get. Well, for me, it says, well, you already know what the answers are. What you're doing is you're putting yes men in seats that are going to give you the answers that you want. You don't want those guys. You know what I mean? You want people that are going to challenge your decision making and make it really robust so that you get it right. Like, I'll tell you now, Richard Becht and Peter O'Sullivan don't like hearing what I've got to say. You know what I mean? There may be a better way to say it, but they don't like what Antonio Iro and Justin Morgan don't like. They're not the answer in the second grade, you know what I mean? And sitting next to an assistant coach like Todd Payten. And I'll tell you why, because they just let Blake Green go. Yeah. It should be the football department to say, hey, if it was me on that coaching staff, I'd say, hang on, we're only 2 wins away from being in the 8, and you want to let our key playmaker go? Who cares? Keep him for 3 months. Pay him his 3 months' wages.
Do they still have to pay him even though he's gone? Will they still have to? Warriors still have to pay?
Well, I don't know how they've negotiated the package, and if Newcastle, of course, Newcastle would have. Can I answer that logically? Of course, Newcastle are picking up their wage packet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What did you think about when they got rid of Brian Smith?
Oh, thank God.
How did that affect you when Brian Smith left?
I think Brian Smith and Peter O'Sullivan are of the same issue. I think that came hand in hand. You know what I mean? They bought Smithy off a farm in New South Wales, and they bought Peter O'Sullivan, who couldn't get a job in Sydney. You know what I mean? So they thought they were being smart by bringing these people back. And what they've realised is New Zealand is a totally different kettle of fish. I think a lot of the stuff that Cameron George has said about COVID is spot on. I think, not knowing whether you're playing in Aussie next year, not knowing whether your team has to go through the same thing, not knowing what COVID is going to look like, you know what I mean? I think those are really, really valid points. But it doesn't stop you from internally fixing up your DNA. What's really worrying for me is we roll around next year and it's looking exactly the same, because you know what I mean. You get exactly the same results.
Can I just utilise both your shoulders to cry on, because I loved Blake Green. I know at stages he probably wasn't everything we needed, but man, he was so close to being it. And yeah, it's such a really good dude and a really nice guy, and the kind of guy that younger players would look at and say, look, he's coping here as we're isolated from everything and we don't get to hang out with our families all the time like all the other teams do. Like, he's coping, and he'd be probably saying some pretty cool shit to the rest of the team to keep them focused and keeping them in the game. And I just, he's more than, I mean, I didn't realise, 4 points out of the 8, getting rid of him now was like letting him go. Sorry, not getting rid of him, but letting him go it just hurts even more hearing those words come out of your mouth. Oh, goodness me, we've lost you. There we go.
Because he found out through the media that the new owners, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to go because he found out through the media that he wasn't wanted for next year, that he was going to be cut, because the new owner came out and said to the media, oh, he's too old, mate, we don't want him for whatever reason. I mean, I would love to have had that partnership, Blake Green, Sean Johnson, a cool head and someone to be fancy pants. Perfect for me. Perfect, because he has a cool head. He's a really cool guy and has a rugby league brain, reads the play well, puts so much hard work into the opposition as much as what he does his own team, so that he knows how to nullify the opposition. He was a good, hard-working rugby league footballer that was a good, decent guy that brought good culture to the club. And guess what? He's gone. Another one bites the dust.
I think the context...
And whether or not it was a financial decision, it was a bloody stupid decision, and the Warriors will suffer for that.
I don't know what's happening.
Look, I think the context of what you're saying
that's my rave on
is
Blake
that
Green.
if you were to
I loved him.
If you were to put 1 to 25 down on a sheet and say, right, who are the first blokes that you let go, Blake Green wouldn't be in the top 20. You know what I mean? So it raises the question of how they came to that decision. Through recruitment, through the football team, whether it be managers and whether or not the senior. I guarantee you, if the senior players were asked, they'd say not a chance. We're still going all right. So I just think that there's bigger issues outside of these decisions, and these decisions are second rate. You know what I mean? They're not like I pointed out with the Frankie Panisi decision around Latelli, they're not decisions that are in the best interest of taking a football team and a club to higher honours. So, you know, how do you fix that? I just don't think you can fix this with a change of coach. I think across the board there needs to be some changes. I don't know whether they're thinking that way, Cameron or Rob Crute and Marc Robinson, but I tell you what. If we roll around next season and Pete O'Sullivan is head of recruitment and we have the same coaches and the same backroom staff and all that sort of stuff there, mate, we're in trouble. I'm telling you. We're going to be going around again with a high expectation, and on honeymoon until about the 10th round where we're headed for divorce again.
Don't forget the Warriors have come off just a 2-point loss to the Premiers, to the Roosters, and just beat the Tigers as well. So there is hope. There is a lot of hope. And the Warriors fans, Marc, don't need to be crying on shoulders all the time. But the thing that concerns me and Kempy is the future of the club. And we've talked about recruitment, you know, a 5-year plan where the Bunnies came out today and brought another 2 17-year-old teenagers. That's 3 on their books now as they plan.
It's not fair. It's never fair in this country.
To get us into the top 8, you know. It's decision-making. It's poor decision-making that will take its toll, not just this year, but in years to come for the Warriors. And I think the fans have suffered enough. They deserve to be rewarded. They need a coach that will come in and shake things up and, as Tony says, change the DNA of the club if they want to win a premiership, because that's what it's about for me. It's about
I think, geez, Lavina, I hope you're right. I think if, you know, I like Tavita Harris. I think he's a very good player, and yes, he's going to turn into that Blake Green that knows how to stir the team around the park. But at the moment, yeah, putting him in there, it was like last year. Remember when he came in? He came in where he couldn't win, and he had to perform every week, and he was the best performer out there for the Warriors. He could do it, and they could sneak in the back door, and I honestly hope they do. But it doesn't fix the issues. That's the problem. It doesn't fix any of the issues. It basically putting a plaster over a boil. And I honestly think that if it continues to head in the way that it is, let's look at the last month and the PR disasters around it. The CEO's got to be under a heap of pressure. You know what I mean? He has to be. If we can't see change, internal changes that are going to take this club forward, then he has to come under pressure. To have Cameron sitting in there listening to these, well, you got to think about it, Cam, don't you? You're having all these decision-making in the last month's been pretty average. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Anyone with a brain can see that.
Can I just... I had an epiphany, I think that's the word you used, when you were talking about Chanel Harris-Tavita and how he performed his ass off. And you know when you're a younger player, I don't, but when you're a younger player and you're trying to prove yourself, and that you play really, really hard and you keep on going, then you kind of do prove yourself and you find yourself in the starting lineup every week, week in, week out. And then it sort of drops off a little. It's kind of like the sophomore kind of, you've been there for a while now, you kind of know the prep, you get used to it, and then you drop a little level down because I guess the player around you hasn't been, because you're standing out, the player around you might drop you down a little bit. How does an organisation like the Storm keep everyone's game up? You know, because everyone seems to be on point. Everyone seems to be playing well constantly, week in, week out. And someone like a Chanel Harris-Tavita, who we're going to see a hell of a lot more of now, Blake Green's gone, how is it you can get him peaking? Because he's proved himself, but he keeps on wanting to prove himself. And all the other players around them are all trying to just prove himself week in, week out. It's
because the Storm nurture their players from a very young age. And, like, if you have a look at Pappenhausen, for example, he was the third-string fullback 3 years ago, you know.
And he's come out on the weekend.
Superstar and one of the players of the round because he was groomed and nurtured through a recruitment development policy that has always ticked every box. And we've talked about it, you know, the young rugby league players here get picked up by rugby or they get overseas at age 16 and they say, we'll give you a Roosters bag and a nice place in Double Bay that you can share with a few mates and see what happens. And from there, they get developed and nurtured and they make it for their club. And it's just like what the Bunnies are doing at the moment. There's so many players that we lose from here to overseas. And if we could keep them all, it would be great. But to keep them all, you have to have policies, procedures in place from the gymnasium to the recruitment to the dietitians to the support factors for whānau and education mainly as well for these kids. And if you can provide that, we'll keep them in the country and then we'll have, you know, such a such a team that can replace anyone, anywhere, you know, but we don't at the moment because those kids are all being lost overseas.
I love this. It's a great mix because I'm just the lazy fan who wants to see win, but I don't want to get involved with the politics side. You've got Kemp who's looking to tear apart the actual structure of how it is and look at it deeply. And then the philosophical side from you, Lavina, you know, saying about, you know, how there's almost not spiritual, but almost like a feeling, a culture around the club that, you know, that interests you. I feel like we've got it all covered. Well, you two have, and I just get to sit back and go, hurry up and win. Make the eight. Make the eight.
Let's look at it from a let's just forget about the Warriors. Let's just say it's a club.
Right.
Okay. So let's forget about it as the Warriors. All right. So let's go in there and have a look at the facts of the club. All right. So for the past, what are we're 2020. Okay. And Marc Robinson took the club over when end of last year.
Yeah.
All right. He signed it over from Carlo Park Heritage Trust. All right. And bought it off the year before from Eric Watson. The DNA in that club has been there for nearly 20 years. Okay. So hence why I say DNA. But it was Eric Watson's DNA. All right. He went through a number of CEOs. He's been through a number of coaches. He's been through a number of players. He's been to 2 grand finals and some final series. But it's his DNA. Yep. And over the past 6-7 years, since 2011, they haven't been anywhere. They're going backwards at a great rate of knots. And a hell of a lot hasn't changed since Eric Watson sold it to the Carlo Park Heritage Trust and Marc Robinson. So Marc Robinson is inheriting DNA. All right, he's inherited it. And the changes that he's had there, he's got a CEO that was still part of that DNA. He's got coaches that were part of that DNA. He's got people right through the club that part of that DNA, right down to the paint that is on the wall in the gym as part of that DNA. Yep. So you talk about Melbourne. Then so let's reverse that psychology. Let's not talk about the Warriors. Let's talk about Melbourne. So what's Melbourne's DNA?
Cheats.
So they're cheats. been to 7 grand finals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Had the coach for the past 20 years. Don't change too much. Have a set of criteria for players that they feel, such as Ricky Latelli, that can come in and do them a job because, like Frank Panisi said, he fits our criteria. We know what works. It's a winning culture. The centres know he's coming because it'll put pressure on them and they want him to come because they'll perform because they're winners. It's part of our DNA. Now, that's the whole point I'm trying to make here, is that when I look at it, I'm inheriting old DNA that hasn't been working for the last 7 years. If Marc Robinson could do something about that, that's what I'm saying. Have the person around or the balls to do that. Go in there and change it, mate.
But right now, Tony, if you take both of those examples, and I'm a mother of teenage boys and girls, and if I've got my teenage boy at the moment who wants to develop his career into rugby league, and I see an offer on the table from the Melbourne Storm, and I see an offer on the table from another club we won't name that have just got new owners that bag out their coaches in the media and sack key players that have given their life to the club over the past half a decade, which contract am I signing at the moment?
Yeah, and that again, that's an issue because you won't see that contract. The player manager will, and he'll manipulate the club, just like Moses did with the Warriors, where he puts in 2 over heavily and starts changing around other players, but it's all in a relationship with your recruitment manager to pump players' contracts up. You know what I mean? Like, it's all part of how it used to work. It was happening there when I was there.
Ask me that same question, Lavina. I'll give you a simple answer. You'd be signing the Melbourne Storm one.
Yeah, because it's secure.
Yeah.
And culture that I'm proud of, and they treat their players with respect. I mean, even when they lost Cooper Cronk to the Roosters, they still treated that man with respect. They didn't get rid of him. They lost him. And they still treat, their 37-year-old captain like he's wrapped in gold,
Isn't that part of isn't that what I'm talking about as part of the DNA? Frankie, I know Frankie well, and I think he's the best in the game. If I could go and get someone to come over here and have a look at the football structure, it'd be Frankie, like just football department, it'd be Frankie Panisi. But what he said in the press just made so much sense. You know what I mean? He broke it down. He said, first of all, we needed a player, which they identified. He fits the criteria, which they identified, and he communicated to everyone that was involved, which is what you want. You know what I mean? It was so transparent, and I just went, isn't that refreshing? Yeah. Like, instead of sitting there and going, oh, shit, geez, I signed Marc Peard, he plays in my spot, and what, they don't want me?
Yeah.
And then like Lavina said, the owner says, mate, you don't want it next year. You know what I mean? Like chalk and cheese. We're talking apples and watermelons. You know what I mean? Not even apples and oranges. It's
been a very long discussion on apples and watermelons and the rest of the fruit. Let's quickly run through a couple of things that we had noted down. Kempe, you wanted to mention Brandon Smith and Sean Johnson. What was it about?
Look, if I was in the recruitment, I'd be targeting those two players straight away. I'd be bringing Sean Johnson back. I think Sean Johnson has finally jumped a hurdle, and I think that he would love to come home. He's having a young family. He'd like to bring him home. I can see Kayla will be sitting there going, we need to be around our family, not sitting here in the Shire wondering whether or not they're going to close our borders. And now that Blake Green's gone and they've freed up $800,000 or $600,000 or whatever it is, I would go to Sean and I'd offer him a lifetime deal to play out the rest of his career here. The other player I would go and get, like I said, is Brandon Smith. I would go and sign him tomorrow. You know why? Because I don't know if you saw the interview from Craig Bellamy. When Cameron, anyone would think Cameron Smith's injured and he's out for a few weeks, you'd think he'd be like in a corner shivering, you know what I mean? Oh no, I've lost my captain. And all Bellamy said was, well, I've got Brandon Smith coming in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was that cool and calm about it. He basically said, yeah, so what? I've got the next best coming off the bench.
Damn it.
You know what I mean? And we're sitting here going, I've been told the Warriors offered him $300,000 to try and get him signed in New Zealand. Are you serious? Seriously, are you serious? The Melbourne Storm are offering him $300,000. Offer him $900,000. Make it an offer that he cannot refuse and bring him back to New Zealand.
Make him an offer he cannot refuse.
So I just think at the moment, if you talk, it's hard enough to get Australians to come back to New Zealand. There are two marquee players that are looking at them right at the moment in the eyes, and I think Sean Johnson, because of his current family situation, especially the way that he's jumped the fence after Cooper Cronk bagged him, is a perfect timing to go to get him. And I think Brandon Smith, mate, you make him your number one target. I don't care what he needs. You get him, you pay him, and you bring him home. Nice. I like direct as well.
Lena, talking about halves that have played at the Warriors, you want to chat about Kieran Foran?
Would the real Kieran Foran please stand up?
Please stand up.
Seriously, that dude gets paid hundreds of thousands of dollars every club he goes to, and I was reading yesterday he played 36 games for the 60 games he should have played for the Doggies, and I think it was the same for the. Peter Sterling came out and said, give him a $500,000 deal, off the cuff so you can keep him at your club because he's loyal and brings so much. I'm not a fan of Kieran Foran anymore. I turned off him when he left the Warriors. I didn't think he put in a full effort. And the Warriors basically gave him an olive branch because it was copping it so much from the Australian media that he needed to get out of the country for all of his things. So they passed him that olive branch, and him and Sean Johnson really, really connected. Sean treated him like a brother. And then there was a 60 Minutes interview, and all of a sudden he's going back to Australia to be with another club where he can get injured and get paid lots of money and never played. So I'm over Kieran Foran. He's not the player for me anymore. And I was really disappointed when the Kiwis picked him as well, because I think he's too old, he's too overrated, and his heyday is well and truly over. Time for someone else to shine. So here's another one in my bad books, because me and Dally Terry, we're good mates now.
Yeah. You watch Foran.
I'm on the Doggies this week.
Yeah.
100%. I'm on the Doggies.
Yeah, no, Kieran Foran should go hang out with his dad, who I think is the CEO of Air New Zealand now, isn't he? He used to be the CEO of Walmart.
Yeah, mate, $800,000 is nothing to that bloke. Go and get Dad's pocket change on a Saturday night when he gets home from the pub. I'm just on the Kieran Foran thing. It opens up. Really, let's give his player manager a pat on the back. That's if you can go over the last sort of 6 years of Kieran's career and what he's earned and the lack of games he's played since he's left Manly. Mate, he's done well, and so has his player manager. So let's give him a pat on the back. But what it does open, it opens up an avenue, I think, and this is leadership from the NRL, where clubs especially can get supported by the NRL about players such as Kieran to make it an incentivised contract. So if you want to earn X amount of dollars and affect the salary cap, but you're only playing X amount of games, then tie it into your salary cap so that it doesn't affect it in such a big way. And we've seen that over the last few months happen. We've got overinflated contracts and players not performing. Look at the Broncos. Yeah. Look at Canterbury. Look at the Titans. All of these blokes on big contracts where their salary caps are knackered because player managers have negotiated them for them. I think bring back incentivised contracts. Contracts. Make players earn their money. And protect the salary cap. But the NRL need to step up because player managers have got away and made hay while the sun shine. I'm telling you right now, they've made hay while the sun shine.
Should be like $10 a try, like it was back in the days. You know, $10
a try, $10 a game, mate. I used to get paid $15 a game back in the old days.
Yeah, Kemp.
So like it's $15 was quite a bit back then.
Those two plays back. I've got a couple of brothers I'd like to come home and play for the Warriors. And they both play for the Melbourne Storm, and one of them captain. Then that's the Bromwich boys. Could you imagine if you could sign their name on for the Warriors for a couple of years? I like the way they play. They're committed. They've got a history here of rugby league and whānau, and every time they come home, they're talking to the recruitment officers that have been here in the past, where they've played their junior rugby league and rugby, and they would put their heart and soul into the Warriors for a couple of years, and you could almost build a pack, not a club, but you could build a pack around Jesse and Kenny Bromwich. You really could. They would install that level of Tofu Harris, which, is tackle everything and don't take any crap from anyone else and bring some muscle and some grub to the game. I'd love to see those boys play for the Warriors. I'd love to see the Warriors sign some back rowers and, some forward players that can actually help propel the team forward and drive the team forward. And then you've got your fancy pants backs that could do what you need to do. That'd be great.
They've signed one in Masella, who's coming home from Warrington next year in the back row. Whether or not he's going to hit the dizzy heights that we're hoping, as far as he's obviously going to play on the right hand side of the football pitch, because we've already got Katoa in the second row on the left hand side of the football pitch. Jesse, I think his brother's gone past him as far as the Melbourne players. I think. As we saw on the weekend, the way he goes through the line, he's been playing some really good football. Not a bad decision to bring back two Melbourne players in a time when you're trying to rebuild the club with the correct attitude. I think that's the sort of that sort of conversation is what you sit down with the table when you're building criteria. Like what sort of player, what sort of attitude, where has he gone from a club? And this goes back to your question about who do you sign for. I've been asked that question a number of times by young families. We've got these contracts for our kids. Where should we go? And I've often said to them, we'll go to the club and ask to have a look at their development structures. Like who's the best the best club to develop your kid, and what are the percentages of them kids going on and playing in first grade. With Jesse Bromwich and his brother, I think it's a really good idea to bring them back into the fold.
And Craig Bellamy as well. I meant to bring Craig as well.
I think what
there's no one left at the Storm next season.
I think what Bellyache is saying is that he's done. Like I've been reading all the articles and even some. Yeah. Look. I think when someone says that they're done, they're not done.
No, I agree.
I think you haven't been innovative enough to tick their boxes, you know what I mean? Get their adrenaline rush, It's like any football player or people that love adrenaline rushes, they go and look for the next hit, That's
we've got a hit here in Auckland. We've got a challenge for you, hey? We've got something that'll reignite the flame for you there, Bellyache.
But I think if you present it to them right, wouldn't it be? You know what I mean?
We've just talked about how much of a mess it is. I don't know how you present such a messy mess right, if that makes sense. Just quickly, because I want to quickly grab you guys player of the round, but you wrote to me, Lavina, you were interested in wanting to talk about the duo of Cleary and Korosau.
They're amazing, aren't they? Aren't they? The Panthers are my new hot team. I love them. I mean, Eels all the way, obviously. Warriors to the grand final, and Panthers looking pretty good. But I just think they're complementing each other's play. It's ridiculous how well they play against any opposition they come up against. And there's such an element of confidence in their game. It's like they're inside each other's heads, and they bring strengths and their weaknesses are being compensated by each other, which is fascinating. And the pressure last year, I think, on Nathan Cleary to be the New South Wales halfback, and then they were injured with players at the Panthers and he wasn't playing his best footy. It's almost like Papa Bear's gone, baby bear, just enjoy your rugby league. That's all you have to do. Just enjoy it. There's no pressure this year. You don't have to worry about state of origin and any of those off-field antics that all your teammates might be saying you're involved in. Don't worry about it. just enjoy your rugby league. And the purchase of Coruscant was amazing. That Fiji international just makes so many yards, and every single time he makes his yards, he just goes, there's a prop, he's bludging, I'm going to run around him. An extra 15 metres as opposed to 2 metres, So many lessons to be learned, complementing each other's games so well. And they're just such a brilliant combination. And I think when it comes to players that are really, really good at their football, it does come down to the combination. When you think about that 6-7, I don't even mean the full spine, but some of the best sevens going around are because they've been complemented by the 6 and they just know each other's play inside out. And those two are playing like they've played rugby league together for the past decade. I'm really impressed with how they're playing, and I love watching the Panthers play, mainly because of those two.
The relationship between your 9 and your 7 and 6 is critical. The most success I've been involved with is because of those 3 positions, always getting on well and knowing each other intimately on a football field when you're calling for the footballs, because you're seeing things, So, I agree with you. I think the Panthers, obviously the form team of the current last few rounds, whether or not they've peaked too early and going into the final series, I just think they've got a balance across the board. But you got to look at how that balance was built, and they built that through a development system that Gill putting in the high performance centre in Penrith, with the biggest catchment area in West Sydney of Polynesian boys. So Crichton's a prime example, sitting out there in that left centre. They've got such an array of junior talent coming through that if you've got really good purchases, such as Coruscant coming over from Manly, such as Cleary signing basically a lifetime deal there, and bringing through Edwards at fullback, the rest of the kids, they've got what we're talking about, a structure that backfills their team. And of course, they're enjoying their football and winning games they're not just winning games; they're flogging sides. So, pretty scary where Penrith are at the moment. I think if we're not careful, the rest of the competition, Penrith's going to sneak up and smack a few other teams as well.
Interesting point you make, Tony, because they're able to get players from that Western New South Wales development program. Hey, with the Western region, players from Dubbo, Bathurst, Forbes, and whenever those young kids that are 16, 17 looking for a trial to try and get into the NRL, the first place for them to go is the Penrith Panthers, because that's first when you knock on the door out west. So they're picking up all these young kids from Western New South Wales that have come through the ranks and played rugby league their whole lives, and good young players are getting an opportunity to knock on an NRL door. And even though they don't sign them up straight away, they put them throughout that development process and policy, which has been great for Penrith and will continue to do so, because they're nabbing all those kids from out that western area.
Yeah, and that's right. They're close to home. That's a main thing, which a lot of Polynesian boys like to have, and they've got a system. You know what I mean? They are given the opportunity to jump into a system, which is a performance system that works. So, mate, I think Penrith look out. They've got a really good structure. They could be around at the top of the table for a long time. Well,
they're up there at the moment. Only just, though. That's what I looked through. Did anyone have a player of the round that they wanted to talk about, or should we move into round 13?
I already mentioned Tohu Harris. I was very impressed with...
You got Tohu? You're allowing Tohu?
He played, and John Bateman had a great game coming back for the Raiders as well. That back rower, he's amazing. He looks like a centre, plays like a prop, and grubber kicks like a 5'8". It's amazing. I love the way he plays.
Well, you can't share the points, Lavina. That's the rules. You've got to award 1 million points to one of them. Which one are you taking?
I'm going to go with Harris, because I don't want him to leave the Warriors. He's my man at the moment. If I'll crumble. I'll cry. I'll be... 1 million
feel-good points for Tavita. I was going to go Tohu Harris.
Well, Tohu, I never had a player of the round. I just thought, we've been... If you remember, we've been talking about the middle of the ruck of the Warriors being the problem for about 3 or 4 years. And that game, if they should put that game on file, because that's how a ruck stays together and plays. I thought they were outstanding. The rotation was very good. The blokes in the middle were hitting the mark, and they were sticking to their tackles and really making it hard for the West Tigers. So my pick of the round is the Warriors ruck. I just hope that they can do that for the next few weeks.
1 million points to the Warriors ruck.
That's
Here we
right.
go.
They never, and they're pigs, mate. They never get the accolades. They do all the hard yards. So they just picked up 1 million points.
Spoken. All right. So this round 13, there are some interesting matchups for placings. Really, there are a couple of which should be mismatches. I think the Thursday's not going to prove too well. The Roosters and the Dragons, but I'm interested in 2 games in particular. The Warriors, to see how they go against the Sea Eagles. That's on Friday. But more interesting to me is I really am interested to see how Blake Green slips into the Raiders lineup against the Panthers on Saturday night. I don't know whether either of those would be the fight of the night, the ruckus of the round, as we'll call it. If you look through they're all kind of...
I think Brisbane are interesting with Fafita back this weekend. I think that's...
the Rabbitohs?
Yeah, I think that's a real... The Rabbitohs have been... I picked the Rabbitohs to win on the weekend, but I reckon they're pretenders at the moment. They're not. I thought they'd be blowing away some of these sides, but they're still struggling. The other one with Manly is Trebojevic is back this weekend, and I think that's a heavy hit for the Warriors, because once Tommy comes back into the side, they are a different team, and they're coming off the back of a massive loss. And it's really interesting Blake Green going into the Newcastle side because they are. Sorry,
I just had a brain fade. Then I'd said he was going to the Raiders versus the Panthers, the Knights versus the West Tigers. Tigers.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good matchup. I want to see how well he slips in.
Yeah, look, I think Blake's going to do
Double
really
loss.
well. No, I think he's going to.
No. I thought you were talking about Blake Ayshford. I think Blake Ayshford's about to take a double loss.
I think so. I think Ace is gone, mate. I think the Tigers are on the way out.
3 in a row started with Parramatta, by the way. Parramatta beat him first before.
Yes, it's been a terrible time for Aysh.
Quickly, the Dragons and Bunnies game on Friday. Was it Friday night or Thursday night? That was a good game. The Dragons raced away and the Bunnies came back, and I think we all tipped the Bunnies to do well. And I thought Kempy made a good point. That we've talked them up all year, and everyone's talked about them being in the top 4, but they're kind of leaving their run to the end of the game, and they're going to run out of time eventually. But was there a game, did you say, Mark? It was the Raiders versus the Panthers. Is that a game?
Raiders-Panthers game.
That game. I think that's going to be a good one. That's the one I really want to watch.
I can just double confirm Blake Green will not be playing in that game.
Yeah. I like the Panthers Raiders game back and the Panthers being on fire. I think the Raiders might ask a few questions, and Ricky Stuart will put a lot of work into what's not working for the Panthers at the moment. So that's a good one. But let's hope the Warriors can string 2 wins in a row. Hey, wouldn't that really
Well, it'll answer the Phil Gould question. That they can't win more than 2 games. They're at 2 now. They've got a few games to go to shove that back up him.
What benefit was it to anyone, him saying that? What a dick. I don't like.
Imagine if that was the motivation.
He's the best fencer ever, I'm telling you.
Imagine if that's the motivation for the Warriors trying to get that last win of the season. All right, team, round 13, enjoy it. Thank you both so much for your time. Kempe, homework for next week.
Yeah, 100%. Looking forward to it.
You don't even have to do the whole roster.
I'll come with a great team.
CEOs
to be brutally honest, I'd give Cameron George a decent crack, but I just think at the moment he's like episode 10 of the Game of Thrones, where Ned's got his head on the chopping block, and he's just you're waiting for him to pull his head away, and he doesn't. You know what I mean? So I'd give him a decent crack.
That's a yellow card for a Game of Thrones reference. All right, team, enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you guys for listening.
Go the Waitara Bears.